Warning, some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. I'm a therapist who specializes in abused children. Ever since I started seeing my new patient, something has been happening. Part 1. Submitted by Michaelia Page. Please, I need your help. I'm on mobile and scared out of my fucking mind, so I'm sorry for any mistakes. A few months ago, I received a file on a new patient. We will call her Ally for confidentiality purposes. She is 13, but due to extreme abuse, she processes emotions and ideas on a delayed level. When I went through her file I had to take a break. It wasn't the worst I have seen. But so close to my own story it brought me back to a time that made me want to help others like me. Now I am going to tell you what I heard from a DVD of her interview with the police. It's awful, so faint of heart beware, but you have to know to understand what lead up to current events. I, of course, will be changing minor details to protect her privacy. This is as close to the full report as I can give you. When questioned at the scene, Ally had this to say. The monster has been here as long as I can remember. It would wait until Mommy, priorly deceased, and John, recently deceased stepfather, went to bed. I would hear the banging on the walls and then it would come in my room. I asked Mommy if she heard the banging, but she told me, no, don't be silly, and sometimes said houses make noises. Ally looked down and continued, now softer. She didn't hear my screams either. When the monster came in, it would touch me, and it hurt. I showed Mommy the scratches and bruises, and she said that I must be swinging around in my sleep, and I must be careful when I play after we do school work. The detective asks her if she goes to school. Yes, in the kitchen, Mommy used to teach me. The detective asked where her mommy is. Ally begins to cry. The monster got her. One time Mommy walked in while he was hurting me, she screamed and told it to go away, that she would kill it. Ally trails off. The detective gives her a minute and then reassures her, and she continues. The monster told her you can hurt monsters, then made her neck pop and threw her down the stairs. I tried to wake her up when the monster left, but she wouldn't wake up. The detective asks her what happened to John, and why he was hurt on the floor after giving her a moment to dry her tears. The monster came in, and he started to hurt me again. But he had a knife. He was hurting me and telling me he was going to take me to Mommy. I wanted to go, but the knife hurt and I just grabbed it, and he was trying to take it back, and it went in him. He screamed real loud, and I knew he was mad, cause he said I would be in big trouble. Then John fell down and the monster left. The detective asks about the fresh scratches and bruises. Oh, the monster came back, but he can't hurt me so bad now. He says that will change very soon though. Ally then bursts into tears. The detective comforts her and hits the nurse call button to have them give her something so she can rest. After watching the interview and reading her medical examination result, positive for sexual assault DNA matching that of John, severe lacerations and bruises, several broken bones healed incorrectly, I had a good idea of what I would be helping her overcome. Hallucinations brought on to shield her from the fact her stepfather had been abusing her, and trauma from that abuse was likely, and now with her abuser gone, but the hallucinations remaining, she was self-harming and not able to comprehend the monster was gone. I began to prepare some things to discuss with her to make sure I could start her on a treatment plan to help her heal. I thought about handing this case over to a colleague, but knew if I did, I would hate myself. Our cases were almost identical, and it would have been a disservice to both that young broken part of myself and Ally if I didn't help her myself. So when she walked into our first appointment, I had prepared myself, but my heart broke as I spoke with this sweet, bright, and kind-hearted young girl. She told me how she blames herself for hurting John, for her mother being killed when she tried to intervene. She was so strong, open, and honest with me. I was proud and knew she would overcome. So after confirming a treatment plan, we got to work. That's where this story gets worse. So we began having appointments 3x a week. I could tell she was working hard to help herself, and I was very proud. The one thing holding her back was the monster. You see, when children have delusions like in this case, it's pointless to tell them that they do not exist. It has been ingrained into their mind, especially when they have suffered untreated for years. All the work we put in would be broken down by what the monster said to her at night. It takes years to overcome these things, of course, but I could see her improve and then the next session she would be back at square one. I wouldn't give up though, maybe her meds just needed longer to build up in her system. Then last week she said something that led to everything that is happening now. Ally walked in and said, "Hello." Then promptly sat down and began drawing as usual. "So Ally, how have you been doing since I last saw you?" Are you settling in at your new home? I asked. Ally shrugged. Miss Foster doesn't like my screaming at night. She looked up at me with big sad eyes. She and Miss Caseworker are talking in one of the rooms. She pointed to an area where the waiting room and a few small conference rooms are. I stood up. Ally, I am going to go and talk to them, okay? Can you keep drawing me some of those pretty pictures? Ally looked up and nodded enthusiastically, a big grin on her face. She loved to draw. She doesn't remember ever doing it before and was delighted when one session I showed her how. I walked out and closed the door. As I walked down the hall and came to the first little room, I heard hushed voices speaking heatedly. You can't just abandon her, she has been through so much. I have been trying, but now she has hurt the youngest kid, and all of the girls are screaming about this stupid monster. I can't take any. I walk in and cut her off. So what is going on? Ally told me you were speaking with her case manager. Miss Foster just dropped a little pink backpack and said, I'm sorry, I can't anymore. And then she quickly picked up a small toddler covered in band-aids and left. Miss Case Manager sighed and dropped into an armchair crammed in the corner. That's the third one, I don't know where else to send her. I sighed, people just can't handle severe cases most of the time, and it's terrible when my patients get moved all over. Miss Case Manager sighed again and said sadly, we have no other open homes, we are going to have to send her to facility in next state over. At this point I was worried, even more. Facility is for unruly children, and Ally would be eaten alive there. Before I knew what I was doing, I said, I'm cleared to foster, I'll take her. Case Manager's eyes widened. Can you do that? I explained that I would have to transfer her case to my colleague, but that I was willing seeing as I was trained and knowledgeable about her needs. Within the hour it was set up. Ally seemed thrilled, she gave me a big hug and stuffed her drawings in her cute pink backpack, but as we went to leave she went white, a tear streaked down her face, and she looked towards the ceiling and whispered, no. Seeing that Ally was distressed, I took her out for ice cream then asked if she would like to go and get some clothes and cool things for her new room. As I hoped her spirits lifted and she was the giggly, sweet girl I had grown to truly care for. We had a great time. We went home, decorated her room, baked cookies, then watched some movies until she fell asleep. I carried her to her room, and then went to bed myself, exhausted from our fun day. I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all to Ally's screams. I ran down the hall blindly in the darkness, hitting every end table or knock-knock on the way to her. I opened the door to see her screaming and thrashing, not in her PJs, and long red scratches and handprints. I ran to her calling her name, telling her it was going to be okay, that I was there, I would let nothing harm her. She calmed and threw her arms around me sobbing. We stayed like that for a while, me rocking her, whispering every reassuring thing I could, tears tracking to and both of our faces. Right before she finally calmed, she stiffened, then drawing a shuddering breath looked at me. It seemed she expected me to be angry, and that broke my heart. I gave her another quick hug and said, let's get you, and those sheets cleaned up, sweetie. We made our way to her bathroom, and I grabbed some towels and a first aid kit. I began to help her clean and bandage her wounds. She looked like she had just been in one hell of a fight. When I was rinsing the blood off her arm, I saw a deep bite mark. I was gently cleaning it when Ally screamed, shut up, go away, leave me alone. My heart squeezed. I would do anything to take this pain away from this small, scared girl. She sounded strong, though, almost angry. Suddenly she went paler than she already was, and looked at me. In her eyes, I saw the fear that was primal. They were eyes that had seen the worst of this earth, even for someone 10 times her age. The monster says if I don't tell you what he just told me, he will kill us both now and drag our souls to hell. They will be his to play with for eternity. I blinked, shocked, but mostly so sad for this poor child. I gently told her, remember honey, we don't listen to the monster. He can't control us. Just then a draft blew through and slammed the door with such force, even I jumped. Please, I don't want him to hurt you. She begged. I cursed silently at the bad timing of that particular draft, but knew she would be terrified if I didn't go along now. Okay Ally, you can tell me. The monster needs to know that I am not afraid of him anyway. Then Ally suddenly pushed me. I wasn't expecting it, so she sent me falling into the bathtub. I didn't get angry, I know how trauma can cause people to lash out. She immediately apologized and says the monster did it. This was expected, and I told her I understood, and that I would be more vigilant next time. She sighed with relief and began to relay the monster's message. He says he missed you, you always tasted so sweet, that his special little girl is all grown up. I knew I couldn't react in front of her, if I let her see how those words affected me. She would be terrified. How could she know? Did she hear someone talking about how similar out cases are? That wouldn't make sense either. No one could know my late mother's boyfriend used to say those exact words to me. All of a sudden, I was that scared little girl all over again. I had to hide the effect what she said has on me. I smiled and said, "Oh, is that all? Well, it's close to dawn, do you want to lay back down, or go ahead and fix breakfast?" Ally seemed relieved and chose breakfast, as I expected. After that, things were relatively normal for a few days. Ally, of course, still had her moments, but we worked through them, and I could see her improving. I was so happy, but 2 nights ago everything changed. Ally had fallen asleep at 9, and I had stayed up till close to midnight binge watching RuPaul's Drag Race. I was getting sleepy, so I decided to do my skincare, and then head to bed. I was on my phone scrolling through Reddit when I heard the banging. It was coming from down the hall, so of course, I checked on Ally. She was still fast asleep, and I was grateful, as this would have scared her badly. I walked to the hot water heater and banged on the panel. The banging stopped, and satisfied, I went to bed and quickly fell asleep. I woke up to someone getting in bed with me. I jumped but then heard Ally whisper, "It's okay. It's just me." I moved over and threw the spare blanket at the foot of my bed over her and drifted back off to sleep. I wish I had stayed awake. I dreamed I was back at my childhood home, before I had pushed him out of the window the night he decided to kill me. I was 15 again. He was doing awful, painful things. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. I felt it all again. It was so real. I woke up crying. Ally was holding my arm in a death grip, but still sleeping. I extracted my arm from her grasp to find a painful bruise, purple and dark, forming on my arm. I went to the bathroom, and when I got a glance of myself in the mirror, I was shocked. I was covered in bruises and scratches. I hadn't looked like this in years. I sat down on the toilet and cried softly. I didn't want to wake Ally, but I couldn't help it. When she woke up and saw me, Ally began to cry. She was quiet all day and barely spoke to me. I tried to tell her everything was fine, but she just ran to her room and closed the door. I decided to keep an eye on her, but to give her space. I left her meals outside her door, and took all of them away, untouched. I decided to call my colleague who took over her case tomorrow, and get her in to see her. The night came, and the banging started again. I looked everywhere but couldn't find the source. Every time I would get close, it is like it would move to the other side of the house. It was driving me crazy. I finally decided to go to my office, play some music and work on some case notes for my patients. It was close to 3 a.m. when I went to sleep. The banging had finally stopped, and again I woke up to Ally getting in my bed. I went to grab the spare blanket again, but was jerked back as someone climbed on top of me. It wasn't Ally. I couldn't make out features in the dark, but he was large, almost 7 feet tall, and so heavy I thought I would suffocate. I'll spare you the details of what happened next. You probably already know, and I don't care to relive it. I must have blacked out from the pain, and rage, and sadness, but as soon as I woke up, I ran screaming for Ally. She was sitting in her bed, crying. I called the police, and they came, took my statement, and my colleague came to sit with Ally while I was at the hospital getting a kit done. The police could find no signs of forced entry, but my kit came back positive, and they went off with the DNA to see if it matched anyone in their systems. When I arrived back home, Ally ran up and hugged me. She said that she was sorry, that it was all her fault. I told her over and over that it wasn't, but then she only cried harder. My colleague left after I assured her we were fine, and I pulled myself together for Ally's sake. I tried to act as calm and normal as possible. We got through the day as well as you can in a situation like this. That evening the police called to tell me they had a match to the DNA. But that something must be wrong. You see, there were 2 sets, and to compound that, the people that were matched were deceased. I began to feel sick. I knew the names before they even said them. It was my late mother's boyfriend and John, Ally's stepfather. I dropped the phone and ran to the bathroom to throw up. Then I sat and cried on the couch. I didn't understand how this could be happening. Was I going insane? Ally sat down beside me, and in her eyes, I saw that she knew. She knew everything. We held each other, crying for our own pain, as well as the others. We must have fallen asleep because we both startled awake in the pitch black of the night. The banging was coming from everywhere and nowhere. I reached for my phone and dialed 911, but only got dead air and what sounded like laughter. I stumbled to the light switch and tried to turn on the lights, but just as soon as the room illuminated, there was a pop, and we were plunged back into the darkness. In that brief moment of light I could have sworn I saw a large man standing behind th couch, arms reaching out toward Allie. She screamed, and I ran to her, but she was just gone. I could hear her screams along with that horrible fucking banging, and as soon as I thought I got close, it would move, just like before. I tried to run outside, to go get help, but it's like the doors were nailed shut, the glass wouldn't break, no neighbors seemed to hear our screams. I just sat down and screamed and screamed and screamed, begging for the monster to leave her alone. Telling it to hurt me instead, but it only laughed. It went on like that for eternity. Finally, right before dawn, the screams stopped, and I ran to find Ally sprawled on the kitchen floor, naked and bleeding like I had been the night before. She was silently crying. Just then a deep, terrible voice rumbled throughout the house. No one has heard your screams, and if they did they turned their backs and fell fast asleep. No one will come to save you. They couldn't if they tried. You will not escape, you will be prisoners here while you give birth to more pain and suffering, and it will bleed out into the world to create more pitiful beings such as yourself. You are worthless, useless, and this is your fault. Then the voice faded, and we were alone again. Our pain bared in the new day's light. We held on to each other for a short while, then, as if we both had the thought at the same time, we looked at one another with fierce determination in our eyes. We started to plan then. We would not sit back and allow ourselves to be beaten and used. We would stand up together, inseparable until we were victorious or dead. So one would hear our shouts, and would have just us. Even if we had to fight together for it. Here is where I need your help. The monster confirmed that there are more of its kind out there. Bred from pain and suffering, they feast and breed by causing more misery and shame. So if it attacks you, don't give up, don't submit and retreat into yourself. Don't let it take your soul. When you hear a scream, don't ignore it, turn your back, and say it's not your business. Fight for those people behind the screams. If you don't, one day the world will be overrun by them. And you and everyone you love will be screaming too.